Welcome back to my channel. If you are new, welcome to my channel. This is Mama Beauties here, and hit that like button, hit that subscribe button if you like true crime videos and lots of other stuff too. So we are doing the fourth part of Letters from Christoper. I already made this video once and tried to upload it, and it did not work. The video would not even play. So if it's a little faster than you would like it, I'm sorry. I'm frustrated from doing it one time already. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. I started it at midnight, and here we are. So we are going to go over Letters from Christoper, chapters 18 through 24. And we know that chapter 17 ended with him failing the polygraph miserably and the drones finding the sheets and the unsettled dirt. So the FBI agents try to use the pictures of Bella and Celeste to get him to confess. That doesn't work. Then they try to pump him up and say that they really appreciate him coming there, even though that he knew he was going to fail and he knew he was lying, but he still came, and they just think that he is a stand-up guy, and they appreciate that he stayed and got it off of his chest. They ask him at that point to be told everything about that morning, and they say they mention about two Chris's. They ask him how come they are finding out about two Chris's, and obviously he failed the polygraph, so they are wondering how this one guy is so wonderful, reads stories to his children, takes care of them, takes them to birthday parties, that could be this other guy. And he tries to act like the two Chris's are because he is having an affair. He tries to act like he failed the polygraph because he's having an affair. And so he tells them that he's caught them and he's caught him in a lie, and that he says that he's not proud of it, but he cheated, and that he denied it to Shanann when she asked him about it, and he feels horrible. He says he would not hurt her, that she is pregnant, and he admits to emotionally cheating. And at this point, he thinks that that's going to get him out of the lie detector. I'm so sorry, my video is chopping up. Anyway, he tries to pretend that this is why he fails, and then he goes into the mistress, and he says that he does not want to get her involved, and he don't want to say her name because she's been through enough. And he goes into how she was breathtaking when he met her, and he had never imagined feeling this way about anyone ever before. And he swears that all that was what he was holding in and why he failed. And the agents remind him that no questions were asked about this mistress during the polygraph. Since they already knew all about Nikki, they did not have to see if he was lying. And they used her name, and at that moment he knew that they knew her name already because he hadn't given it to her. And then we all watched the FBI agents lead him in all these different directions, but that's their job, right? It's not that they necessarily believed that Shanann had killed the kids, but they wanted to try different ways to get him to actually confess that he had killed Shanann and go from there. And so we all see that, but Chris didn't see it. And then Agent Coulter says that the Alexa is programmed to pick up distress. Now, I don't know how much this is true or if this is one of their lie tactics to get him to confess. If you guys do know if this is true, please drop it down below and let me know if the Alexa does have a program to pick up distress. And then he reminds them about that he's able to get all the texts from all the parties involved, that he'll be able to see Shanann's text, Chris's text, Nikki's text, everybody involved. And at this point, he asked him again to recall the morning of the murders. And this is when Chris says that he got up at 4 o'clock and he woke her up at 4:15, and they had this infamous emotional conversation, but he can't get the nerve to tell Shanann about Nikki. and that Shanann asked about the lazy dog. Now, we all know from the discovery reports that Shanann had already confronted him about the lazy dog when she was in Arizona and had mentioned to him to keep the receipt so she could see it. So maybe he is recalling this on a different day, or maybe they talked about it again and he's not lying. Who knows? But we all know that they already talked about this before. So did this really happen that morning or before that day? The agents say that how is it possible that they had this emotional conversation where they both were crying when they haven't seen him shed a tear in the last 2 days over the death of his children? How are they supposed to believe that he's crying over this separation with Shanann that morning and that it got emotional when they haven't seen him get emotional at all? Well, Chris takes this moment to make a little sniffle and said that he loves his daughters and that the lack of tears did not mean anything. And the creepiest part about that part is that after that, him saying that no tears meant, the lack of tears did not mean anything, he says in that moment that he loves his girls to death. And the agents say that the only way for them to even get out of the house that day is through the truck. And Chris says that there's no way he just threw them in the truck. And the agents reminded him that his GPS pings every 10 seconds and they will find out where he went that day. And he says, I know. That's what Chris says. And then the agents ask, are we not asking the right questions? Are we doing something wrong? And Chris says, no, nothing wrong. And this is where they ask if Shanann did it and he was covering up. And he says that she did nothing. Now they go into this story of this other lady that had killed her children and that the husband covered it up to protect her. And this is where his wheels start spinning. You can see that his wheels start spinning. And of course the agents don't believe this, but again, they're trying to get Chris to confess. And so when the agent asked, him again what she did to the kids, Chris then starts to say, I want to talk to my dad. And so the agents say that his dad can come in, but will he tell him the truth? Would he confess to Ronnie? And he just keeps repeating that he wants to talk to his dad. Now let's remember that he's been in this interrogation room for 5 to 6 hours at this point, okay? During the polygraph, during the interrogation, he hasn't left this room in about 6 hours. And so they go get Ronnie because Chris is saying he wants him, and they tell Ronnie everything and that everything in the room is going to be recorded. And Ronnie goes in, and Chris says to Ronnie as soon as he walks in that he failed the polygraph, he's not leaving, and the police know about the affair. Now, I thought this was interesting when he told Ronnie about this. Ronnie's face did not look shocked about an affair. He did not change at all. And so either he already knew about the affair or this is something that's not shocking and is just normal or in their family. And so he tells Ronnie that him and Shanann had that emotional conversation that morning and that he doesn't want to protect her anymore. And he repeats it again that he doesn't want to protect her. And he says that he didn't know what else to say. Now, Ronnie says, what happened? And Chris replies, she hurt them and then I freaked out on her. And Ronnie says, is that when Shanann left with the girls? And Chris stutters and Ronnie says, talk to me, tell me. Chris whispers, she smothered them. And Ronnie said, they what? And then Chris said strangled, and then he paused and said smothered. And then Ronnie said smothered or choked. And Chris says he did not hear that he was stuttering through this as he's talking, and he says that he came back upstairs and the girls were gone. And he says that he freaked out and he did the same effing thing to her. Those were my kids. And then Ronnie asked if Shanann freaked over the separation talk. And Chris said that she laid down and he went downstairs and he heard a commotion upstairs, but he did not think anything of it. And then he said that when he went back upstairs, he saw Shanann on top of Celeste, smothering her. Ronnie asked if she was choking. Did she kill her? And Chris responds that they were blue. And Ronnie said both of them. And Chris said yes. So Ronnie asked if they were choked to death, and Chris skips over that and repeats he freaked out and did the same effing thing to her. Now, Ronnie is in shock at that point. Now he is, and he says, oh my God. And Chris says that he did not call 911. So Ronnie said, then what did you do? You just hauled the bodies off or something? And Chris said he did not know what else to do, so he freaked out. And then Ronnie repeats what Chris has been telling him, that Shanann did it. And Chris says, it's just rage. But we know now that the author put later on in the book that, or earlier in the book, that Chris says that he didn't have any rage. So why he told the police officers he was raged, I do not know. And then Chris looks at Ronnie and says, this is the last time I will see the light of day. And Ronnie asks him at this point if the FBI knows that he wants to be the first to tell. The FBI is what the book says, but I think it's his wife. I think that was a typo, that he wanted to be the first to tell his wife and he didn't want the FBI to tell his wife, but I'm not sure and I don't know. And he said that we will need to get a lawyer who can find out what the hell to do. And then, no, he says, we need to get you a good lawyer who can find out what the hell they can do. And the agents came in at that point, and he gives his first confession. And in this one, he focuses on Celeste. Now, remember, his second confession, when they came in February out to the prison, he focuses on Bella. So he says that he saw Shanann killing Celeste on the monitor. And when he went in, he saw that she was blue and to the side and not breathing. And so he killed Shanann. And agents ask, where are they? And he says that they are at Survey 319. And they asked, why that spot? Is that just where you were going? And he said, and then they asked him, do you want to go out there? And he said, no way. And they said, how about you pinpoint on a map? And Chris starts worrying about what the agents think of him and apologizing to them for lying and just really bothered that they are going to think he's a bad person. And then he speaks of the blind rage again and that he knew Bella was gone because of the way that she was laying. And then the cops asked him if Shanann fought back, and he said not much. She couldn't because of his rage. And he said that, but we all think that he either killed her earlier that night or that she was asleep or falling asleep, or he sat on her like my ex-husband did and he was pretty much straddling my throat and his knees were curled here and his shins would hold down my arms. And so when someone is sitting on you like that, you have nothing you can do except move your legs. And so maybe that was what would happen, but I would think that there would be bruising from him being on top of her. So I don't know. None of us really know. And so they asked him, he speaks of his blind rage again and that he knew Bella was gone because how she was laying. And then Ronnie brings up the doll pic on Facebook and he shows it to the police officers and he says that Shanann was planning this. He thinks that Shanann was planning this. And then the agents ask about going to get the bodies, and Chris is more concerned about the co-workers that they have to get to take them out there. And he's like, oh my God, no. And he flips out at that idea. But the people can't go out there without Anadarko because they didn't know any of the safety issues. And so they had to go with Chris's co-workers out there. So there was no other way to do it unless Chris wanted to go himself. And he obviously didn't want to go anywhere near it. So chapter 19 starts out about them locating the girls, and Ronnie leaves the interrogation room and they show the drone pics of the sheet and the dirt that's unsettled. And Chris says Shanann is there, and he says the girls are in the tank, and he drew a S by the dirt and a B and a C on the separate tanks on a map. So he said that Bella was in the west tank and there's about 1 feet of oil in that tank, and Celeste is in the east tank and there's 9 feet of oil in that one. And he goes back to describing Celeste blue and limp and not moving and not gasping for air, and that he did not see it happen to Bella. Agent Lee gives him this situation of how any other parent, even if their child was dead, they would still try to render aid. They would still try to do CPR, that they would not be able to face the fact that the child was gone, and that they would still take them to the hospital and try to render aid. And the fact that he did not do that, that he didn't even try to revive them, that he did not try to save them, really, really concerned the Detective Lee, or the Agent Lee. And so he just said that his rage was taking over, and that's why he did not do so. So the agents personally think that they died before Shanann got home, and Chris trails off to that, saying no. And he makes a point to say that Shanann is in the same clothes when he murdered her that she was in at the survey. And the agents bring up the 111-minute phone conversation that he had the night before the murders with Nikki. And they say that she called from 9:28 to 11:19 that night. And we all know that her plane was due to arrive at 10:30. And so she would have been getting home around 11 p.m. So did they keep this phone conversation longer because her flight was delayed, or did he just not care at this point? And he says that it was a normal conversation with Nikki, and that they had phone sex, but Nikki says that they just talked. He says later on that they had phone sex, but he told the detectives in this confession that it was just a normal conversation, and she told detectives that she didn't remember what they talked about. But later on, Chris says the reason why they lied is because they had phone sex. But me personally, I think that this was a long conversation because Shanann was coming back, and Nikki was already feeling insecure and thinking that he wanted to be with her. And so she was probably pressuring him a lot and telling him that she wanted to see him more, and when Shanann got back, she wouldn't be able to do so. So they asked why he put the sheets in the trash, and he explains that he wrapped Shanann in the top sheet and he just threw the other sheet in the trash. And they asked about the hatch being so small, and they asked him if he forced the children in there, and if he dismembered them, and that really bothered him. And he was like, no, panicking about that. And he recalls that he forced them in, and that he says that because of the differences in splashes, that he knew that Celeste's tank was full and Bella's tank was emptier. And then they asked if he put them in alive, and he said, oh no, God, no. And then they asked him, did he ever went to check back on Bella when she looked dead? And he said no. So Chapter 20 starts out with the recovering of the bodies, and the workers meet at a truck stop called Love's right there next to the survey, and the agents bring the picture where Chris had drawn where everybody was. And so the book cuts to finding of the sheets and the grave, the shallow grave, and collecting evidence and recovering the body. And it says that Shanann's body was super decomposed very badly, and that she had had a coffin birth, and that it took forever to get her out of there. By the time they were done with getting Shanann, that it was midnight, and they would have to come back for the girls in the morning. So rescue workers had to hazmat up. They had to take precautions. They had to make sure that they kept track of the gas around the bodies, the gas around the hatches, to make sure that nothing was going to explode. It was very dangerous and very scary for all of these involved. Plus, they seen some very traumatic things. You guys know what happened to the girls' bodies while they were in the oil tank. I'm not going to say what the autopsy says about the skin, but that's enough. So imagine every single one of these people will never see anything like that again in their lives. So to see these two children the way that they did, I guarantee you all people and all parties involved have nightmares every night. They've needed therapy. I'm sure there's some serious trauma that went with the recovering of the bodies for all that are involved, including the CSI workers or whatever they're called. So they had to remove the bolts from the bottom of the oil tanks, and they had to take the oil out. They had to filter all the oil so they could make sure that no evidence was left behind. And so they did Celeste first because she had 9 feet of oil in her tank, and then Bella had less. And they said that they could see Bella's poor body down at the bottom of the tank through the top of the hatch. So that's how little oil that was in there. And so chapter 21 starts off with the autopsies because they've already recovered all the bodies in chapter 20. And the author says that not the full autopsy report was given, but an observation of the autopsy was given. So on August 17th at 10 a.m., CBI gathered for an autopsy in Loveland. That's where I got married. Shanann's first skin... I'm not going to say that. Shanann was first. Her autopsy was first. And they noted about her skin. And they noted about the birth. And Chris says that he had seen that she had given birth when he dumped her body. But I honestly don't think that this is possible. I think it takes a certain amount of time after you pass for you to deliver. But I could be wrong. I am no medical expert or no coroner. So, then they collected the amniotic sac and the fetus, and they sent it off to the CBI, and Shanann's cause of death was ruled mangular strangulation. Then they did the autopsy on Bella, and Bella had scrapes on her lip, and her lip was torn from her lip where it connects to her gums here, and she had bit her tongue. And Bella's death was very violent, smothering, the coroner said, and that she did fight back, and she did have oil in her stomach, and her cause of death was violent smothering. Celeste's cause of death also was smothering. So the author ends the chapter with the word or the definition of sane, and after she gives you all these explanations of what sane is, she asks you if you think that Chris is this way, and then she gives you the definition of insane, and she gives you all these characteristics of insane, and she asks you if you felt Chris was more insane than sane, and then she gives you the definition of possessed, demon possessed, and all these different characteristics of being possessed by a demon. And in that she says, I will let you decide if you think that this is more like Chris. And so then it goes into chapter 22. By the time the search was done 3 times with Chris's consent, these are the items that they had collected by the 3rd search of Survey 319. They collected 2 plastic bags, the sheet with red stains and dirt all over it, the rake head, the rake handle, the tuft of hair from the tank, which Chris is saying is Bella's, but it was received from Celeste's tank, so it has to be Celeste, but not sure about that. I didn't double check that in the discovery. Shanann's clothes, and oral swabs of all the girls' mouth. Chapter 23 goes into Chris's thoughts. Now, these are Chris's exact words from the book. I can't really read it to you, so I have to take out little paraphrases. But he says he is only 34. And just like his family, his life stopped at 34. He says that he took his own life. His job, his family, his friends, his house, is everything that he had that meant anything to him. He says that he knows that him and Shanann were not meant for each other. He knows that now. And that he's afraid that if he says his thoughts about it, that he would think, that we all would think that he was blaming Shanann, and he's not. He says that they were 2 different people with 2 different views, 2 different personalities, and that sometimes opposites attract, but not him and Shanann. And he says that he was not true to himself when he met her, and she was so beautiful that he could not relax and be himself, and that she was confident and he was quiet and liked the background. He says the day of his wedding was the happiest day of his life, and it's one of the good memories that he has, and he will always remember that day, and that she was so beautiful, and that there was no bride in the world more gorgeous. He also says when he thinks back on it and what he had, he still can't believe that he lost his whole family. He didn't say killed. He said lost. He says, I want that he lost the family that he wanted his whole life. So he said that it's most horrible thing that he could ever do. And he's still saying that not his mind and hands that did this, but the hands and mind, that his hands and mind were being controlled by evil, and that he hopes people believe him. He said that he needed to rise to the occasion and be a man and let his wife know that she can't control everything and everyone around. And if she did not understand, to just split. He says, I was not able to confront the situation or confront Shanann with feelings. He said, with his feelings. He said the big house was her idea and that he knew that they could not afford it. He said, but he wanted to make her happy and he would not ever tell her no. He also says that they had built the house when they first moved to Colorado and that they paid $2,300 a month for mortgage, $500 for insurance, and none of that included the HOA. And Shanann did not pay that. We all know the HOA. And his health was important and that he loved working out, and Shanann resented that, and to us, she seemed proud of that. So I don't understand where he got that Shanann resented that he was healthy and working out, because she was bragging about it on Facebook and talking about how much weight he lost and how good he looked. So I don't know. And then he also says that she staged workout clothes and running shoes and would make him take a picture of her, and she would fake that she was working out. He also says that him and Nikki talked about how Shanann hated the fact that he worked out and how awful that was. And that is another reason why he wanted a divorce. He also says that after he moved to Wisconsin, that this lady wrote him that he had no idea who she was. She had no idea who he was. She evidently was not familiar with his case, but she wanted to tell him about this dream that she had. And in the dream, she was walking by this bedroom, and in the bedroom was a child's bed, and there was a child. She could hear a child in there. So she went in there and she saw liquid dripping from the child's bed, and she went over there and looked at the child, and the child was laughing and saying, I'm having a lot of fun up here. And so she said that she then went to look at his case or whatever and saw pictures of his children, and she automatically knew that it was Bella, and that she wanted to write him to let him know that Bella was having a good time in heaven and that she knew that she was up there. And so he said that she has never wrote him back after that. He hasn't talked to her. But he knew without any doubt whatsoever that Bella was in heaven. And that is how the chapter 24 ends. Okay, so the next chapter will be 5 more chapters. Or I think that's how chapter 23 ends. My bad. Yeah. Yep. So that concludes this 5. I have 5 more chapters to go over, so there will be a whole nother part. I'm so sorry I didn't get this up earlier. I promise you I did it at midnight and it just wouldn't upload. And so I'm going to hurry up and end this before it hits 30 minutes. And stay tuned. I should be posting the other one on Sunday or Monday. If the Alexa does pick up on distress, please let me know if that is something that is true. And you guys have a great day. Subscribe to my channel. I just want to let everybody know that this case hits really close to me because my ex-husband choked me out in Frederick, Colorado, to the point that I passed out and thought I was going to die. I also live in North Carolina right now, and I also soul thrive like a mad person. So I feel like this case is close to home. Thank you, everybody. You have a wonderful night, day, whatever it is. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Bye.